I've been on the search for the perfect small form factor gaming PC to run SteamOS in the living room, and it does need to meet a little bit of criteria. First and foremost, it does need to be using an AMD GPU, be it an iGPU or a dedicated GPU. That's just going to allow us to get all of those Steam Deck features and official SteamOS on something like this. The second thing I was looking for was good performance. And of course, we could use an iGPU, but I wanted to run games at 1440p or even some newer games at 1080 ultra settings. So I definitely needed a dedicated GPU, and it led me to this PC here. This is the Radeon G7. It's actually a refurbished model from their website. It's much cheaper than originally launched at. And given the price point of this refurbished model, it's going to be hard to beat and find something that comes close to the performance this is going to put out unless you build a PC yourself, and you're not going to get this kind of form factor out of it. And originally, the G7 came with Windows 11 installed, but what I've done here is install official SteamOS. I've downloaded the Steam Deck recovery image, I've followed the instructions on Valve's website, flashed it to a USB drive, installed it to the internal drive here, and everything's working. It's actually a pretty solid system. When it comes to the overall specs here, this thing's actually packing some decent performance. We've got the AMD Ryzen 9 7945HX CPU, 16 cores, 32 threads, 32 gigs of RAM with this system, and as for that dedicated GPU, it's got an AMD Radeon RX 7600 MXT with 8 gigs of VRAM. Like I mentioned, I got this refurbished, and the only downside here is it doesn't come with the stand, so you will have to set it horizontally. But $719, and I think site-wide it's $15 off right now, so around $704. You will have to add your own hard drive and RAM. It utilizes SODIMM DDR5 and a 2280 M.2 SSD. And to tell you the truth, I mean, given the price point here, if you take a look at other mini PCs or mini gaming PCs with dedicated GPUs brand new, they're ranging anywhere from $1,000 up to $2,500. This isn't a bad deal. Now, of course, you can always build something for the same price, maybe even get out a bit cheaper if you buy some used parts from eBay, but you're not going to hit this form factor. Another thing we have here is our performance button up front, so we can go to high power mode, which is just going to give us as much as possible to that CPU and GPU. I believe the GPU will boost up to around 100 watts and the CPU up to 75. There was one thing that I changed from the BIOS, and with this Minisforum system, we've got their visual BIOS. It's actually not necessary, but it's something I always like to do with these systems that have an iGPU and a dedicated GPU, especially with SteamOS. So from Advanced, AMD CVS, NBIO common options, GFX configuration, and I like to disable that iGPU just to make sure SteamOS doesn't get tripped up and start using that iGPU. Sometimes when switching between desktop mode on other systems, I've seen it get a little confused, so I've just disabled it. You can always test it out if you want to, leave it to auto, it's up to you. But this is also going to release all of our system RAM. We don't have to use any for the iGPU because we've got that dedicated GPU. There's a couple other things you could do here from Advanced, again, AMD CVS, SMU common options, system configuration up to 75 watts, or if you wanted to program it yourself using Smart Ship Control, you can do it here. I'm going to leave it to auto. I'll save and exit, and we'll get right into SteamOS. Okay, jumping right in here, like we saw, we've got that performance button right on the front, and I will have this turned on when we're gaming, but there was a few things that I wanted to show you here, and once I installed the official SteamOS recovery image, I just installed it to the internal drive, everything seemed to work. So from here, we do have Wi-Fi, we've got Bluetooth, so we can use wireless controllers. Moving over to our performance, setting up that overlay. Definitely takes up a lot of space with 16 cores and 32 threads, but it gives us a lot of great information here. Only thing that's really missing is the wattage for the CPU in our performance menu. So you can see it's just at 0 watts, but we're in auto mode from the BIOS like we saw. Let me turn this down just a bit. There we go. We can disable the frame limiter, VRR, and I've got this connected to a 120 Hertz display. If you've got a display that supports HDR, it's here, and manual GPU clock is actually available from here, and it's working with this 7600 XT. Pretty interesting, but no TDP control. All of that's going to be done from the BIOS. Now, if we get into our settings, I'll show you that we are on official SteamOS. So moving down, SteamOS Hollow 3.7.13, and I'm not even on a beta. We're just on that stable build right there. Getting down a bit. With this setup, we've got that 7945HX, 16 cores, 32 threads. 32 gigs of DDR5 here at, I believe, 5200 in this system. And of course, we've got that AMD Radeon RX 7600 MXT. 8 gigs of VRAM. So far, I'm pretty impressed by the performance I'm seeing here. And of course, I mean, one of the main things you do with this is game, but we've also got our desktop mode. So if we go to power, we can switch to desktop here. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into some gaming here. And we're going to start out with, let's do Marvel Rivals. Here it is at 1440p high settings with FSR set to balanced. And keep in mind, with all of the games that we're going to be testing, we're not using any kind of frame gen. If you want to almost double your frame rate, this RX 7600 MXT does handle frame gen quite well, especially built-in frame gen. And I've always thought of this GPU as a 1440p high card using a little bit of FSR, or 1080 Ultra with no FSR. And with SteamOS installed, I mean, it seems to hold true also. Seeing some really decent performance here, and our temps are also looking great. Next up, we've got Doom the Dark Ages at 1440p high, XeSS set to balanced, and I use XeSS here because I do think it looks a little better with this game. I probably would take this down to medium settings just to alleviate any dips under 60. For the most part, we're seeing an average of around 64. We're getting real close to going under, but overall, I mean, it's holding steady like it is. Spider-Man 2 1440p very high with IGTI scaling set to balanced. You can go with FSR and you might lose a couple frames here and there. I don't notice much of a difference in fidelity going from FSR to IGTI, but I do notice a little bump in performance, and that's why I use this scaling method instead. We're seeing over 90 FPS on average at very high settings here. I did try this with frame gen just to kind of get an idea, and we were seeing an average of 135 FPS with that enabled. Here's Cyberpunk 2077. We're at 1440p Ultra with FSR set to balanced. And I'll tell you, with this game in Windows, I usually have to drop it down to high, FSR set to balanced at 1440 to see this kind of frame rate. Average of 74 FPS, and it's really nice to see that SteamOS is kind of trucking along here at those Ultra settings. But again, CD Projekt Red did spend a lot of time with Linux in this game, and recently this is ported over to Apple Silicon, so you could actually run this on a new Mac with a M1, M2, M3, or M4. It's not as good as we're seeing here, but it is possible. I also wanted to check out Elden Ring. We're at 1440p maximum settings, steady 60. You might see it dip down to 58 when there's some particles on screen, but if that counter wasn't up there, I wouldn't notice it at all, and it's a super smooth experience here. And the final game I wanted to test out was Oblivion Remastered. With this, I did drop it down to medium settings at 1440 with FSR set to balanced. And when doing some exploration out here in the wide open, it actually runs pretty decent at high. But as soon as we head over to one of these areas, it kind of falls on its face. So that's why I'm at medium here. But throughout my testing in both of these areas, an average of 73 FPS. So in the end, is it worth doing something like this? Is it worth picking up a refurbished G7 to get SteamOS up and running? Well, so far, I mean, everything's been working great. It installed without a hitch. We've got Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. It's boosting up properly on the CPU and GPU. The performance here is great. It's really going to be up to you. If you're looking for a super small form factor PC with SteamOS to run in the living room, this could work out for a lot of people. Or you could take that money you were going to spend on a refurbished model and put it towards building a larger PC that could theoretically outperform this, but you're not going to come close to this form factor. This thing is super tiny for what we have here. So that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you're interested in learning a little more about the G7, I'll leave links in the description, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I mean, is this a decent deal? Is it overpriced? Are you going to wait on something? Are you going to put something like this together? Let us know in the comments. And like always, Thanks for watching.